The last American think tank I shall discuss is the Business Roundtable. Founded in 1972, the Roundtable comprises the CEOs of 194 of America's largest corporations. Its membership represents approximately half the GNP of the U.S. The Roundtable's GNP is greater than the GNP of any country in the world apart from the U.S. In the same year it was founded, Justice Lewis Powell, shortly later elevated to the Supreme Court by the Nixon administration, wrote a famous memorandum for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which was a virtual manifesto for the neoconservative movement. In it, Powell urged business to buy the top academic reputations in the country to add credibility to corporate studies and give business a stronger voice on the campuses. A study by Ralph Nader's organization observes that the Roundtable buys supporting research through the hiring of expensive consultants and the sponsoring of academic studies. Money generates information in the form of studies and position papers, and the Roundtable has access to all the money it needs. The dominant purpose leading to its formation, the Nader report finds, was a desire to combat and reduce union power, and it proclaims moderation while sabotaging moderate reform. Roundtable members consider their defeat of labor law reform and consumer protection bills in 1977-78 to be their biggest victories. It is instructive to consider some of the means the Roundtable and its allies employed to achieve these victories. What had happened to the Labor Law Reform Act? There are a couple of peculiar American handicaps to union organizing. Management can delay indefinitely representation elections, and whenever management calls a meeting to argue against union organization, it can prevent access to unions at these meetings, in fact, preventing unions from stating their case. The proposed Labor Law Reform Act was to secure some limited reduction in these handicaps. The Business Roundtable joined the NAM, the Chamber of Commerce, and others, and the National Action Committee to wage all-out war against the bill. While its associates flooded Congress with stimulated mail, running to millions of letters and postcards, attacking the power and legitimacy of organized labor, the NAM kept a relatively low profile. It hired a public relations firm to manage its enormous grassroots efforts, which, in an update of the Mohawk Valley formula, were directed to stimulating public sentiment hostile to unions. To this end, opinion surveys were used for publicity as quickly as the pollsters could produce the right result, and 329 pages of editorials opposing labor law reforms were prepared and distributed to local newspapers countrywide. In December 1977, as though to signal an all-out war on labor, the president of the NAM announced the formation of the Council on a Union-Free Environment, which would, he said, be the first single-purpose national organization devoted to the maintenance of a union-free environment in the United States. A second victim to such lobbying became the Consumer Protection Bill. The Roundtable and its allies organized a national distribution of cartoons, pamphlets, ads, and newsletters in opposition to the Consumer Protection Agency, CPA. The Roundtable hired a public relations firm to distribute canned editorials and cartoons opposing the bill to 1,000 daily newspapers and 2,800 weeklies. Portions of the distributed material were published, without indication of source, approximately 2,000 times. The Roundtable also sponsored a fraudulent poll which claimed to show 81% of Americans opposed to the CPA, when independent polls showed them as 2-to-1 in favor. The Chamber of Commerce exploited the fraudulent poll in full-page ads in the New York Times and elsewhere. The defeat of the bill for a consumer protection agency was, Fortune reported, in 1980, a signal victory for the Roundtable and, in retrospect, a watershed in the history of consumerism. A review of the Roundtable's history in the nation sums up its achievements.
After a decade of defeat for for the trade union movement, segments of a divided and weakened labor movement are now negotiating with key roundtable figures for a separate peace. With this final twist, the New Deal comes full circle. In the late 1970s, as in the late 1920s, the business of America is business, and the populace cannot imagine it otherwise.
As in 1919, 1921, and 1946 to 1950, so in 1976 to 1980, complete business hegemony over American society was reestablished. On each occasion, the same propaganda and public relations methods, if increasingly sophisticated, have accomplished the same result.
That was the second half of a one-hour program on corporations and propaganda by the late Alex Carey, an Australian sociologist and psychologist. The principal reader was Ed Markman. The music is by Chas Smith. Richard Friedman read the text quotes. Sound clips are from the audio collection of San Francisco State University. The original program was produced in 1988 with help from the staff at KPFA Radio in Berkeley by me, Mariah Gilardin. A collection of essays by Alex Carey with a foreword by Noam Chomsky has since been published posthumously under the title Taking the Risk Out of Democracy.